It was supposed to be a heartwarming celebration among the closest of like-minded allies. When entertainment legend Elton John announced his inaugural Radical Compassion Summit in the coastal Idols of Montecito, California, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle simply had to be in attendance as honored keynote speakers. After all, the iconic singer had long been considered part of the Sussexes' dwindling inner circle since rallying to their defense amid the bruising battles and fallout with the royal family. As one of the few high-profile celebrities still empathizing with the self-exiled pair's truth campaign against Buckingham Palace, John represented a vital pillar of support in their embattled public relations war. So it was with a renewed sense of rejuvenated purpose that Harry and Meghan prepared to step back into the global spotlight at Elton's debut, Compassionpalooza, after months of reputational setbacks and humiliating streaming deal failures. They envisioned the sunshine-drenched symposium as the ideal rebranding launch pad, to realign their polarizing narrative under the guidance of John's influencer imprimatur. Better yet, the multi-day conference promised to be an oasis of sympathetic emotional sustenance from the demonization they'd endured in the unforgiving court of public opinion. What the delusionally tragic duo failed to comprehend until it was too late was just how decisively the tides had already turned against them among their most ardent former supporters. While ensconced in the privileged ivory tower bubbles of their obscenely lavish royal exile, the cataclysmic collapse of Harry and Meghan's fading credibility had been swiftly codified into inescapable reality. And now, the merciless karmic chickens had finally arrived home to roost in stunningly savage fashion. As damning leaks of the couple's latest money-grabbing schemes surfaced in the days preceding the much-ballyhooed Compassion Confab, public revulsion morphed into wholesale disgust at their rapacious imperiousness even among their most fervent sycophants. For Elton John himself, the searing vitriol of fans accusing him of coddling the duo's flagrant grifting represented a horrifying breaking point that could simply no longer be dismissed as overblown hysteria. "I refuse to sit idly by as my art and life's work is steadily toxified by these two deluded ingrates shamelessly leeching off society for their every grift at our expense." As the iconic singer-songwriter stood on stage before a capacity crowd of nearly 20,000 people under the baking late-afternoon sun in Montecito's lush botanical gardens, every syllable dripped with a Vesuvian intensity releasing decades of pent-up volatility. Elton's shock of straw-colored hair and characteristically flamboyant performance attire made for an almost cartoonish dissonance against the raw, unvarnished fury emanating from his expressively quivering face. "We are all gathered today under the shared communion of compassionate healing and societal reinvigoration," the legendary artist continued in a momentary pause to collect his bearings. "Yet our most fundamentally sacred values have been irreparably poisoned by the bottomless gall of two soulless grifters whose unyielding thirst for material and ego gratification appears to know no bounds." The sudden slashing vitriol earned a smattering of stunned murmurs and baffled glances from the otherwise rapt attendees who descended on the picturesque Southern California venue anticipating a weekend of restorative benevolence typical of John's championed causes. But any lingering doubts over exactly whom could be the intended targets of the normally affable performer's splenetic rage were shockingly dispelled beyond all ambiguity. "So let's go ahead and rip the luxuriously overpriced Band-Aid right off, shall we?" seethed Elton in a tone of disgust. Prince Rarepants and Duchess Sueberry Grifsalot themselves have proven to be the most despicable cancers on the collective soul of human empathy and dignity imaginable. Instantly, a surreal hush fell over the sprawling and formerly festive concourse as the vituperation escalated into undisguised hatred for his former, closest friends. Elton alternated between trembling slow burns of apoplectic rage and sudden feverish bursts of renewed rancor while recounting a shameful litany of allegations against the disgraced Montecito moguls. Blind items citing Harry and Meghan's recent attempts at gaming the U.S. immigration system through quasi-legal household staff reclassifications were slammed as tantamount to outright fraudulence and abuse of the public trust. Their breathless publicity tour of New York City hotspots in a haughty play for renewed relevance was derided as nauseating bids of tactless thirst for A-list leeching off real talent. The recent firing of the half-dozen remaining staffers devoted to their inexplicably persisting Archwell charitable organization efforts was condemned as nothing less than flaming hypocrisies ahead of their latest big-money media grift. Simmering just beneath the surface of Elton's bombastic censure was the white-hot fury of a beloved cultural icon witnessing his own legacy suddenly dragged into disrepute. While the rock immortal had long ascribed himself as an avowed supporter of the dispossessed and disillusioned, Harry and Meghan's cascading improprieties had precipitated an unmistakable point of no return. These two odious sycophants have willfully embarked on an outright extortion campaign bent on sabotaging their own family and universal icons, raged the visibly shaking John. My eyes have been wrenched open to their hollow moralities and vacant souls. These wanton parasites smother the very charity and forgiveness they demand from others. As the legendary singer's rabid diatribe escalated to levels of eruptive hostility few in attendance could scarcely process, the twin targets of his unrestrained vitriol sat paralyzed mere yards away in the stunned audience. Both Harry and Meghan's paled complexions had gradually drained of color as the sickening realization crystallized that this was no mere temporary outburst or overwrought misunderstanding to be smoothed over in time. After a lifetime of meticulously cultivated shield against the worst abuses of fame and scandal, even Elton John had reached an apparent nadir of unforgivable contempt towards them. To make matters more unnerving, the couple found themselves the subject of smoldering glares and unmistakable ostracization from frowning attendees seated nearby, fellow virtue signalers and hangers-on making no pretenses about whose side they'd be taking in this unexpected schism. This grotesque public repudiation represented a searing debacle amplified all the more for its profound betrayal by an inner-circle intimate. As Elton raged on with ceaseless invectives about hoarding fictitious woes for tawdry public spectacle, and falsely pimping their very nightmare as prophets of compassion, a visibly distraught Meghan sat numb and shell-shocked. The typically defiant former actress now crumpled into a heap of remorse and anguish under the weight of humiliation. For his own staggered part, Harry could only stare numbly into the clarifying distance while tears streaked down his hollowed cheeks. The breathtaking magnitude of every selfish decision and self-righteous stance crystallized with shattering epiphany, leaving him choking back dry heaves of disgrace. How did we ever fall so far down such destitute depravity? The hollowed Duke quietly repeated to nobody but himself amid the relentless watershed of verbal desecration still raining down upon them. Order versus entitlement. As the volcanic outpouring of rage continued to pummel Harry and Meghan's shriveling reputations in unending waves of disgust, a spontaneous smattering of thunderous applause began rippling through the tens of thousands still captive audience members. What started off as scattered enthusiastic pockets ultimately transformed into a torrential standing ovation for Elton John's righteous disembowelment of the disgraced power couple. It became a surreal scene unlike anything ever witnessed. The very same throngs who'd once devoutly hung on the former royal's every self-pitying whim and cry of oppression were now ecstatically cheering their unceremonious vaporization. Cries of "Let's go Elton," and